Dude, listen. It's not even 2026, and the grocery store is already starting to look like my bank account after rent is due depressingly empty in all the weirdest spots. And no, you're not getting a push notification for this. It's all happening on the down low, like a ninja apocalypse, just quietly stealing your favorite snacks aisle by aisle. So get this, some nerds pull the numbers from over 400 stores, and 10 of the most basic things we buy are already down by anywhere from 35 to a staggering 80%. There are no warning signs, no limit one per customer notes like with toilet paper. Stuff just ghosts you. It's here one week, gone the next. And the craziest part is what times isn't times going missing. We're not talking about eggs, milk, or meat, the stuff that gets all the news coverage. The shortages are hitting the boring things, the stuff you assume will always be there. I'm talking vanilla extract, jasmine rice, frozen vegetables. You know, the absolute core ingredients you need to pretend you're an adult who actually cooks. Apparently, behind the scenes, stores are already cutting their orders. Suppliers are capping how much they'll send out, and a couple of these things are projected to totally run out before 2025 is even over. Yeah, long before 2026 even bothers to show up. So what's the deal? Oh, just the usual perfect storm: factories taking a nap, weather going completely insane, and energy prices deciding to cosplay as a rocket ship. And probably the biggest reason, other countries are hoarding their own stuff to make sure their people are fed. Can't really blame them, I guess. So I'm going to give you the rundown on the 10 most random grocery items that are about to pull a disappearing act before 2026 gets here. And fair warning, numbers 2 and 1 are things our house literally uses every single day. Kicking it off at number 10, the good coffee beans. Look, for people who have actual jobs and crippling debt, coffee is more than just a way to wake up. It's basically the only calm, civilized ritual we have left in this circus of a world. That whole vibe of grinding the beans, the steam coming off the cup, that smell hitting you in the kitchen. It's the one signal that the day is starting and you don't have to scream into a pillow. Yet, well, guess what? That little slice of sanity is about to get completely wrecked, and most people have no idea it's coming. The world's coffee supply isn't just getting a little tight, it's straight up falling apart. Brazil, which is like the king of coffee, just got slammed by a nightmare drought. I read that farmers were calling it the scythe from the sky. Super dramatic, I know, but it basically torched huge fields of coffee trees. And just when they thought the worst was over, instead of rain, they got frost. And apparently, frost kills coffee plants even faster than a heat wave. You can't make this stuff up. Elsewhere, it's just a domino effect of disasters. Ethiopia is flooded. In Colombia, landslides are blocking roads, trapping truckloads of coffee for weeks. All over Central America, the coffee is literally rotting on the branches because there aren't enough workers to pick it. So you have farmers just watching their paychecks fall onto the ground, totally helpless. At the same time, global shipping costs are still headed for the moon. The insane part is, the coffee exists. It's sitting there in bags, all ready to go, but there's no good way to get it to the people who roast it. And as winter rolls in, when everyone needs their hot cup of survival juice, the first things to vanish aren't going to be the cheap bargain brands. Nope, it'll be the premium stuff. The single-origin Ethiopian beans, the light roast Kenyan coffee, all the small-batch Colombian varieties. The fancy reserve lines that coffee snobs and okay, fine, me don't just drink. It's part of our whole personality. The real worry isn't that coffee will disappear completely. It's that you'll be forced to drink some generic, dirt-flavored sludge after you've spent 10 or 20 years with your one true love. Some habits just aren't interchangeable, you know? At some point, it stops being a preference and becomes a critical part of your emotional stability. I'm not telling you to go build a doomsday bunker filled with coffee like some kind of prepper. But if your entire morning mood hinges on one specific bean, with one specific taste, grabbing a few extra sealed bags and stashing them somewhere cool isn't an overreaction. It's just preserving your sanity before prices hit what experts are calling the biggest spike in years. Nobody gets to pick your coffee for you unless you let the market do it first. A little planning just keeps that choice in your hands. Number 9, Jasmine and Basmati rice. I know what you're thinking. Who cares? It's just rice. Yeah, well, wait until it's gone. Nobody ever stops their day to say, man, thank God we still have rice. It's totally invisible right up until the bag is almost empty. That's when you realize how critical it is. Our aunt from Thailand told me this story once, about when she first moved to the U.S. in the 1990s. She showed up with just one small bag of jasmine rice. As it started running out, she stopped cooking it freely. She started measuring it out like half a cup at a time, not because she was trying to save money, but because she was genuinely afraid she'd never find that exact same kind of rice again in an American store. She said something that's always stuck with me. When you don't have the rice you grew up with, it doesn't feel like home anymore. Now, 3 decades later, that whole scenario is coming back, but for a totally different reason. This time, it's not about being in a new country. It's because the entire world's supply of the good stuff is under attack. India just extended their export ban for another year, which pulls tens of millions of tons of rice off the market. Thailand got hit with flooding that lasted for weeks. The main spot in Asia for growing rice is dealing with the worst saltwater contamination in history. Meanwhile, farmers here in the U.S. are just giving up on rice and planting soybeans instead because it's easier and makes them more money. Can't say I blame them. Then there's China. When a country with almost 1.5 billion people decides to start panic buying massive amounts of rice, the whole global market just, breaks. There's a saying traders have: when China buys, everyone else waits. And trust me, this isn't some theoretical problem. People are already feeling it. In some states, jasmine rice has literally vanished from the shelves. In others, the prices have shot through the roof, and all that's left is the low-grade, crappy stuff. Some shopper summed it up perfectly. I've been eating this rice for 40 years. Do I really have to change now? That's a tough one. You can't just tell a South Asian family to swap their basmati for generic long-grain rice any more than you can tell an Italian family to use ketchup on their pasta. It's just wrong. Food isn't just fuel, man. It's your memories, your identity, it's comfort. But here's the honest-to-God truth. If jasmine or basmati rice is a daily thing in our house, and then, because the universe has a great sense of humor, a fire decided to torch a huge chunk of the vanilla supply, the backup stash that was supposed to keep us from situations exactly like this. In a flash, our one little buffer against insane prices went up in smoke, leaving the whole supply chain wobbling like a Jenga tower. Meanwhile, everyone's still craving it like crazy. Every coffee shop is still pushing some new vanilla monstrosity. You got your cold brews, ice cream, yogurt, protein shakes, cereal. Basically, everything you eat has vanilla in it. Then the holidays roll around, and everyone's baking like their lives depend on it, and the whole thing just gets worse. So what happens? You go to the store and the bottles are suddenly tiny, the price tag makes your eyes water, and the label now mysteriously says vanilla flavor instead of extract. Congrats, you've just witnessed shrinkflation, and a quality downgrade happening in real time. And when your rent, gas, and everything else already cost a fortune, paying that much more for a little bottle of flavor starts to feel like a personal attack. This isn't about becoming a doomsday prepper. But look, if you actually bake, or you need that vanilla syrup for your morning coffee to feel human, grabbing an extra bottle of the real stuff before it costs the same as a tank of gas is just common sense. At this point, that little bottle isn't just flavor. It's the difference between planning 5 minutes ahead and staring at an empty shelf wondering where you went wrong in life. Number 7. Cooking oil. We're talking sunflower, canola, all of it. You never really appreciate cooking oil until you're standing in your kitchen at 8 a.m. trying to make a simple fried egg, and realize you literally can't. That's when the horror sets in. Your entire ability to cook hinges on that one greasy bottle. Nobody thinks about cooking oil until the bottle's basically empty, but heading into January of 2026, that problem is about to hit everyone all at once, and way harder than usual. The supply for a bunch of different oils is getting tight simultaneously, and you're already seeing the fallout. Sunflower oil, which mostly comes from that whole Black Sea mess, is totally screwed up thanks to the never-ending conflict. Factories that used to pump out millions of liters are now barely operating, if they're open at all. So, everyone who needs oil for their products has to find something else. This sends them flooding over to soybean, canola, and olive oil, which were already having their own issues, and the timing is, of course, just perfect. It's all happening right when demand is at its peak for the holidays, when every family and restaurant is using oil like it's water. Restaurants are desperately trying to find cheaper oils so they don't have to charge you $30 for French fries. At the same time, big snack companies are quietly buying up all the raw oil they can find to keep their chip machines running. You don't see this corporate Hunger Games, but you definitely feel it. When you walk down the grocery aisle and see giant empty spots where the Wesson used to be. And running out of cooking oil isn't like running out of ketchup. It brings your whole kitchen to a grinding halt. No more frying, no sautéing, no decent meals. It's a tiny shortage that causes a massive amount of rage because suddenly you can't even make basic food. Look, I'm not telling you to panic and fill your garage with vegetable oil, but if you actually cook, you know you're going to use it. Keeping a couple extra bottles of canola or whatever tucked away in a cabinet isn't hoarding. It's just saving yourself a major headache this winter. Anyone who's ever stood over a hot pan with a cracked egg in their hand, only to discover the oil bottle is bone dry, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And before we get to the next disaster, I'm actually curious. Down in the comments, tell me what kind of oil is disappearing first where you live. Real-world intel is always faster than the news. Number 6. Frozen vegetables. Welcome to that magical time of year when your freezer becomes the only place to find a vegetable that isn't sad and wilted. In most of the country, January is basically the off-season for anything green. Grocery stores are full of bread and canned meat, but the fresh produce aisle looks grim. The lettuce is depressing. Your options are basically potatoes or nothing, and the prices are so high you have to take a deep breath before buying a single bell pepper. For a lot of people over 50 who are actually trying to eat a balanced meal, those bags of frozen veggies are the only thing keeping them from a winter of scurvy. They're the reason your plate has any color on it when it's a frozen wasteland outside. What you probably don't realize is how much of a miracle that $3 bag of frozen broccoli even is. The crops have to be picked at the perfect time. The factories have, like, a few hours to get them washed, chopped, and frozen. The freezers have to run 24/7, and the refrigerated trucks can't be late. If just one of those things goes wrong, a power outage, a drought, a blizzard that shuts down the highway, the entire frozen food section can be wiped out in a couple of days. People are already seeing it happen. Their online grocery order shows up with half the stuff missing, or that brand of peas you've bought your whole life is just gone, replaced by some fancy small one that costs twice as much. And the worst feeling isn't even seeing an empty shelf at the store. It's opening your own freezer, the one place you thought was reliable, and realizing it's almost empty. Getting ahead of that isn't some genius move. When you see stuff like broccoli, spinach, or whatever is still on the shelf and doesn't cost an arm and a leg, just toss an extra bag or two in your cart. It's simple. And if you're feeling ambitious, you can buy fresh stuff when it's on sale, boil it for a minute, and freeze it yourself. This isn't about panic. It's just making sure your diet doesn't become exclusively mac and cheese just because a snowstorm happened 1,000 miles away. Number 5. Canned soups and bone broth. Or, as I call it, I've given up on today food. Anyone over 50 knows this feeling deep in their bones. It's that day where you're just completely drained, your throat hurts, you're freezing, and the thought of actually cooking a meal is laughable. On those days, you just want something hot and simple that asks literally nothing of you. That's the whole point of soup. A single can is the difference between a miserable day and a day you can actually survive. It's what you eat when you're sick, when it's freezing out, or when you're just out of energy. But surprise, surprise, this stuff is starting to vanish from shelves faster than anyone thought, and the reasons are just a laundry list of problems. Meat costs a fortune, vegetables are expensive, the factories don't have enough workers, and even the metal for the cans is pricier now on the world market. Throw in one big snowstorm that blocks the highways, and the whole soup aisle can get cleared out overnight. I've seen tons of people saying the same thing. They never realized they were on their last can until they were already sick and desperate, and as we get into early 2026, it looks like we're set for a repeat, but with higher prices and fewer choices. I'm not telling you to go buy pallets of Campbell's, but if you're someone who relies on a can of soup when you're feeling like crap or the weather is awful, having a small stash in the pantry isn't hoarding. It's just making sure that when you actually need a little bit of comfort, it's already there. Number 4. Baby formula, especially the sensitive and specialty kinds. Okay, for real, this isn't about money or convenience. This is about a kid's actual health. There is nothing in a grocery store that causes more genuine fear than this. We can deal, right? We can switch brands of cereal or whatever. A baby can't. And for the little ones who need the really specific formulas like hypoallergenic or amino acid-based stuff, not having the right one turns a normal day into a legitimate emergency. It turns out late winter is the absolute worst time for this stuff to be available. The factories shut down for maintenance, crazy weather screws up shipping, and imports get tricky. So when the supply starts to dry up, the first things to disappear are those specialty formulas that doctors tell parents to buy. Some mom left a comment that pretty much says it all. She went to 6 different stores and found one single can, and it wasn't even the right kind for her baby. Said she just started crying at the checkout. That sentence right there is why this whole thing is a nightmare for parents. So here's the one rule, and there are no exceptions. Whatever you do about formula has to come from a pediatrician. Period. All right, listen up, kid. No, you can't just whip up some homemade version of this stuff in the blender, and no, you can't mix and match brands you find on some sketchy website. We're talking about real life, where safety isn't just a suggestion. But here's the actual nightmare families are walking into this winter. Let's say you have a kid who needs a very specific formula. Thinking you can just wait until the can is basically empty is a level of gambling I wouldn't even try in Vegas. Having an extra container or 2 on hand for the winter isn't being a crazy hoarder. It's called being a responsible adult, a concept I know is foreign to you, to protect your kid from a supply chain that's about as reliable as our Wi-Fi. Because when we stumble into January 2026, you might not have the luxury of choosing the one your kid actually needs. Seriously, if you've ever seen the shelves get bare where you live, you should tell people about it online. Those horror stories are what help other people get their act together before they're backed into a corner. Number 3. Nuts and their buttered-up cousins. That's right, the compact fuel source you completely ignore. You probably think of almonds, walnuts, and peanut butter as just some bougie luxury. You know, just a snack you grab while you're doom scrolling. But when the grocery store starts looking like a post-apocalyptic movie set, that jar of Jif suddenly becomes a 5-star meal. It's loaded with calories, packed with protein and good fats, lasts forever, needs zero cooking, and can literally keep you going for a whole day. What you don't see is how the whole system propping up that little bag of nuts is about as stable as my savings account. See, California, the place that grows pretty much all of America's almonds and walnuts, is basically turning into a desert. They're facing insane water shortages. Farmers are out there making Sophie's choice with their trees, either dump a ton of water on them or just let entire orchards croak. And for pistachios, the drought has already murdered huge chunks of the farms. At the same time, the South is getting hammered with storms that wreck pecan farms, which, by the way, take decades to grow back. So while the supply chain is crumbling, the big food companies just adapt on the sly. Your favorite snack company starts using fewer nuts in their bars, the granola recipe changes, and the good nuts just kind of vanish from the shelves with no explanation. If you actually read what people are saying online, it's obvious. Everyone's grabbing an extra jar of peanut butter, freezing nuts, or trying to find cheaper options. This isn't panic mode, it's just people waking up. While the prices for meat and milk are doing a cha-cha, nuts are still one of the most solid protein sources you can get. It's a solid source of fat and energy, especially for older folks like mom and dad who don't have the energy to whip up a 3-course meal every night. And with winter and holiday baking coming, demand is about to go through the roof, jacking up prices on everything. So if you guys actually eat nuts or peanut butter, now's the time to make sure you have some. I'm not saying to build a bunker out of it, just enough to not get totally screwed when the market flips overnight and that stuff suddenly costs as much as a new video game. Number 2. Greek yogurt and all that high-protein dairy stuff. Looks small, but it's a freaking lifeline when you're over 50. For a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, that little cup of Greek yogurt isn't just a snack anymore. It's literally one of the easiest, most dependable ways to get their protein in. 1 cup in the morning helps keep their muscles from turning to mush, helps with digestion, and is a hell of a lot easier to stomach than a steak or a piece of fish. But right now, the dairy world is quietly being squeezed. The cost to feed the cows keeps going up, crazy weather means less milk, the processing plants are paying more for electricity, and even the stupid plastic tubs have become a pain in the ass to get. You won't see a single headline about this, but you'll see it at the store. Anyone paying attention has seen the clues. Your favorite flavor is there 1 week, poof, gone the next. The big family-sized tubs are the first to go, replaced by those tiny, overpriced single-serving cups. The price creeps up just enough that you don't notice until it's suddenly way too expensive. These are the sneaky little changes, but they're super unsettling for anyone who actually depends on this stuff every single day. Greek yogurt, kefir, skyr, cottage cheese. All that stuff is the first to disappear when the milk supply gets shaky. And as the year ends, everyone wants more of it right when factories slow down for the holidays. That's when you really start to see the gaps on the shelves, especially the good high-protein stuff. If this is your main source of protein, especially if a doctor told you to eat more of it for your muscles and bones, then this isn't just about groceries. It's about your health and stability. That's why smart people have a simple plan. When they see their brand, they just buy 1 or 2 extra. It lasts for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's one of the safest things to have a little extra of if you eat it all the time. And if things get worse, you gotta have a backup plan. Like mixing regular yogurt with some whey protein or just switching to cottage cheese for a bit. It helps you keep your protein up without getting completely thrown off when the market has a seizure. A little planning now saves you a lot of freaking out later. And number 1, aluminum foil. I know, it's not food, but it's the unsung hero your entire kitchen runs on. No one ever thinks about aluminum foil. You don't eat it, you don't post selfies with it, and you don't notice it exists until you run out. And then suddenly, you can't roast anything, you can't cover a lasagna, you can't bake a potato, you can't line a baking sheet, and you can't freeze leftovers properly. The moment the foil is gone, a shocking amount of normal cooking just grinds to a halt. And from late 2025 into early 2026, aluminum foil has secretly become one of the shakiest things in the entire supply chain. And the reasons are super boring and complicated, which is why no one talks about them. Making aluminum takes a truly insane amount of electricity, and with energy prices going to the moon, a bunch of factories have just slowed down or shut their doors. On top of that, the foil factories rely on machines from Europe, and all the spare parts are stuck on a boat somewhere in a global traffic jam. Meanwhile, China has basically said, Nope, we're keeping our aluminum, so they can use it for their own stuff. Less supply floating around the world means less for us. You can already see the scam in stores. The rolls look the same, but they feel way too light. That's shrinkflation, my friend, happening right in front of your face. Grocery stores are already reporting that they're running low, and the packaging industry is warning that this isn't just going to be a problem for home cooks. It's going to mess with frozen meals, takeout containers, and even restaurants. Look, I'm not telling you to go build a bunker out of Reynolds wrap, but if you guys use foil a lot, for cooking or whatever, grabbing an extra roll or two before winter and the start of 2026 isn't crazy. It's just making sure your kitchen doesn't completely shut down over one cheap, stupid, simple little thing. We don't need to clear the shelves like a bunch of zombies. What we need is to just be aware, just look at this list, figure out which stuff your family actually uses every week, and just get a little ahead. Take one small step at a time before January 2026 shows up, because once the new year hits, everything is pointing to the same conclusion. The stuff that's already getting hard to find is only going to get worse. So, let me ask you straight up. Out of all this crap, which one have you already seen disappearing or getting ridiculously expensive where you live? Go online and check the comments sections for this stuff. What people are seeing in their own towns is the only real map of how bad this whole mess is getting.